Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios, fellow gear nerds. In today's review, we're going to be taking a look at the Wolf S8-5 electric bass. So if you've been with the channel since around March, you've probably seen this little raggedy thing. This is a Rogue something or another, I don't know. I paid like 120 bucks for it on sale. This is my other 5-string bass. It's like a basswood body, some piece of crap maple neck bolt-on with pickups that barely output anything, but it works, it's cheap, and I didn't really care at the time. However, yeah, that's good, just bang it on the tuners, they love that. However, I'm about to do a much higher quality demo take of a couple different projects, one being a more southern flavored heavy metal type thing, another being a progressive 8-string type thing. So I needed a better bass. There was no real doubt about that. So I've been in the bass market for a couple of months, and I've shopped around. I've looked at the typical heavy metal basses that most people buy, some in the Schecter or Ibanez or ESP range. Now the thing is, I'm a guitar player predominantly, and as a result, I treat my basses a lot more like tools than I do with my guitars. My guitars are instruments, and I do have some that are very specialized, some that are more general use, but I enjoy playing guitar more so than I do bass. And although I do really enjoy bass guitars, it comes down to the fact that I really just need one that can kind of cover it all. And you know, if I had my way, I'd have some type of Fender jazz bass or something along those lines, or a Rickenbacker, and then a super modern bass that would cover all those in between tones. But for the time being, with the type of material that I'm working on, and like I said, the fact that I'm just a guitar player first, it really came down to me needing one bass guitar only. So looking through some of those brands that I thought I would be more interested in, I found a few things. First of all, they were either charging way too much money for the types of features that I was looking for, or they just didn't have the features available whatsoever. Some of the things that I was wanting: number one, I wanted a neck-through bass to match my neck-through Agile 8-string. I do like neck-through instruments. I like set necks a lot, but if I'm going to have one bass to rule them all, I wanted it to be neck-through to have that sort of sustain I'm looking for. Number two, and even more important than the neck-through part, is a 5-string bass. Have to have a 5-string to be able to cover the low-range stuff that I work on. Sometimes I go down to A or even G sharp on the lowest strings. Sometimes I'll tune it up to C and use the higher G string in a higher register than that, but has to be 5-string, has to be extended scale. To complement the 5-string, I was hoping to find something that was longer than the standard bass scale. 35 inches was what I was looking for. I was hoping to have some type of decent finish on it. A lot of the Ibanez and ESPs that I was looking at were a nice glossy or satin natural finish, which would have been fine to me because I don't really plan on taking this thing out of a studio environment, but some of them were just god-awful, or if they weren't, they were more expensive than most of my guitars. And the last thing was, I didn't really care what the pickup situation was, as long as it can make a lot of versatile sounds. Whether it was passive or active with a sculpting preamp, as long as it sounded good, as long as I could get a bunch of different tones out of it, it doesn't really matter. For guitars, I have pretty clear and cut opinions about what I want when I use passives, what I want when I use actives, but when it comes to basses, I compress the shit out of them anyway, so it's not like it's going to be that big of a deal if it does have actives. So like I said, I searched high and low, Musician's Friend, Sweetwater, eBay, Amazon, and then finally came to Reverb when I was looking at a few other pedals and whatnot, and I came across a company called Wolf. Don't be ashamed if you never heard of them, because I hadn't heard of them. And even after some intensive Google searching for this thing's manual, I found that it basically doesn't exist. And there's a pretty simple reason for that. Wolf is a Korean-based company that owns factories that make some of the guitars and basses in the lines of Epiphone, Takamine, and even ESP. So while at first glance something like Wolf written across a headstock may look like a pawn shop brand, they're actually pretty damn well versed in their, luthiers and guitar smithing techniques. I'd first stumbled across a natural 4-string that was the same body style as this, and I was really impressed at the price range of the instrument. It was close to about $430-ish if I remember correctly. But basically the same construction, except in a 4-string, had the same active pickups with the through-band EQ. And after a little more digging, I came across this exact model, which happens to be a translucent black finish neck through. You got, once again, your active pickups with a push-pull volume pot that will bypass the preamp, and you got a blend knob. You don't just flip between the pickups, which now that I'm starting to get used to this thing, I really like this more than a individual volume. It has a 35-inch scale, exactly what I was looking for, 5-string obviously, and most importantly to me, it does not break the bank. This thing was listed at $600 plus $40 shipping in the region that I live in, but I actually caught a really nice discount code on Reverb, and that brought me down to $550 on the dot, including shipping. So even after watching a couple demo videos, seeing the construction quality and the aesthetics of this thing, I was thinking what probably a lot of you are thinking right now. There's got to be a catch. There's something that is too good to be true about this. How can you get a sub $600 bass that looks and plays and sounds that good? So I ordered it out of curiosity as much as the fact that I needed a bass guitar. And I'll let you hear the results for yourself. So I don't know about you, but to me, it sounds pretty freaking impressive, and especially at the cost. And to that point, I'm going to compare this thing a lot to my Agile 8-string back there. Matter of fact, let me grab it. Now, Agile was actually the first place I went to look for bass guitars when I was first started getting into the market for the things, but they don't make anything really outside of P-bass knockoffs from what I can tell, and I think their highest end unit costs in the neighborhood of $400-500, so they were pretty much right off the list from the start. But I would call this the Agile Interceptor of bass guitars. This is kind of a Meshuggah rig on a budget, except, you know, not extreme budget, but in terms of being able to buy two instruments, this thing was around $850-900 by the time it shipped. It was about $1,000 with the case, and then this is, you know, $550 with no case for $1,500. Less than the cost of a single Meshuggah 8-string or many decently spec'd out instruments just like this one. I could have both. And the thing that I would say about both these instruments that, well, aside from the fact they both have active pickups, they're both neck through, both extended scale, they're like the evil twins, which is also very similar finishes. This one's a little bit more wood tinted, this one's a little more green, kind of, I don't care. Very subtle differences, but they look freaking awesome together, in my opinion. Almost identical backs, though. But the thing that I would say about this Wolf bass is that it is very much like this in the fact that perhaps it's not the most special instrument in the world. Perhaps this isn't a good guitar nor a good bass to buy if this is going to be your only main instruments. And what I mean by that is that these things I view very much as tools for recording and playing. I love this guitar. Definitely the most versatile and a very good sounding guitar in my collection, but they don't really have the soul, and it's something that's hard to quantify unless you've played for a long time. These things will give you a good sound. They'll give you a good sound without having to fickle with them very much, and they're reliable from my experience so far. The build quality and aesthetics, components, everything is outstanding, especially in their price range. And just like this Agile, this thing has an unbeatable value per dollar in its price class. However, I don't think these things are going to be your killer tone. This isn't going to be the piece of equipment of your signal chain that makes you stand out from the rest. It's kind of like having a 5150 half stack. Kind of every metal player on earth has one of those things, it seems like. So they're kind of generic in a way, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing in my opinion, especially for the recording artists like I am. And sure, if you're a dedicated bass player and you know exactly what you want a different finish, you want blah blah blah, then it makes sense to spend $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 if that's what you want to do. That's cool. But both of these instruments have unbeatable value per dollar in their price class. I cannot find a bass that is similarly equipped to this for anything less than $800, $900, and they have a lot of things that I don't want on it, or that they kill it with stuff like dot inlays. Let me rant about that for like 10 seconds. Can we stop ruining good guitars with freaking dot inlays? We already have it on the side. We don't need that. Like, it doesn't help you. It just ruins an otherwise slick looking instrument. I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. It's a, aesthetic stupid thing, but I mean, this thing manages to still look classy with the inlay of 1,000 wolves right there. And that's it. This thing doesn't have anything. They look so much better. But anyway, I digress. You're not going to find, in my experience, something that's going to be this reliable in the price range. So conclusion time. For the money I paid for this thing, I still can't really believe it. I've picked up plenty of instruments that cost twice this much, and I don't like them nearly as much. And maybe that comes down partially to taste. I do like more minimalist studio style guitars. I would take a Les Paul Studio any day over a standard, just because it's stripped down without the pick guard, without all the gaudy crap on it. I would rather have a more natural instrument, something that looks like wood slapped together, and this kind of what this is. But it has all the necessities to me. You got the string through, you got the 18 volt preamp, so you don't even have to perform the mod like I did on my 8 string. You got the 5 string, you got the extended scale to hold that low note. You got a switch between active and passive sounds, stays in tune, plays great, feels great. The action is wonderful for a instrument of this length, and well, it's heavy as shit. That's about the only bad thing I can really say about it, but I prefer that. It's going to hold the note better. It sounds great acoustically too. So if you're in a similar circumstance to me, where you can only really justify one bass guitar and you're going to be using it primarily for recording, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find something that is competitive to this thing given its features in the price range. And if you don't trust a Korean company you've never heard of that makes, instruments with wolf inlays on the 12th fret, I understand. I totally understand. But I've had a really good time with this thing the past few days, getting some great sounds. As a matter of fact, I'm still not sure that I've unlocked the full potential of the sounds this thing can offer. It's going to have a little bit of its shortcomings. If you turn up the preamp all the way and you start screwing with the EQ, it is going to get a little noisy at some points. And for that reason, like I said, if I was a bass enthusiast, it would be something that would probably drive me insane. But for what I'm using it for, I have no complaints. And I honestly would not have a lick of shame bringing this thing on stage if I were to fill in for a bass player at some point. Matter of fact, it's prettier looking and has more aggression to it than a lot of basses I've seen played live. So not really a factor to me either. It's just heavy, which is okay. So if you're debating between expensive and nice, but don't really feel like putting up the cash for it, I think this is a very respectable middle ground between something like the lower end BC Rich or ESP bass and the higher end models, because I feel like this price range isn't really served very well. It's you kind of got a weird bastardization between the two, where you get basically none of the good things about the higher end. You get stuck with shoddy electronics a lot of the time, bolt-on necks, which if you like bolt-ons, that's fine. I don't for basses, if you don't have one. And in my opinion, you just don't see a lot of improvement over some of the entry level tier models. Whereas with this thing, this feels like the real deal at half the price to a lot of the instruments. So if you're in a similar situation to me and you're interested in this thing, do your homework, go check it out on Reverb, go listen to some more reviews. I would highly recommend that. But this could very well be what you're looking for as a home studio tool. And if you're also like me and don't buy half the crap about what people say about the quality issues of Agile, maybe in the past, but that's a perfectly normal, actually exceeding quality guitar in my opinion, and you're willing to put your faith in yet another company that you may not have heard of or are a little skittish of because you've not seen on the shelves of Guitar Center, then I think you'll be satisfied with this thing. So yeah, I'd recommend it mostly. It depends on your situation, but if you're not a bass player first, I think you'll like it just fine. So that's my opinion for the day. If you have any other questions about the S8-5, be sure to leave them below, and hopefully we'll be seeing and hearing more from this thing very soon. I think I'm going to enjoy it. My neighbors probably won't, but I will enjoy it a lot. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.